Hi, everybody. I'm Kara's mom, and I understand she's doing a report about different types of abuse. And, there is physical abuse, but there's also emotional, mental abuse, and how it affects people in life. And she asked me to come and do a video for her talking a little bit about what I've gone through in life because as she knows, because I don't lie to my kids, I've told them everything in my life because I believe if I would have known certain things at their age, maybe I would even be a stronger person. Somebody that, you know, I'm not saying I'm not a strong person in today's world because in today's world, okay, I'm a 38-year-old woman. I have 3 biological kids, 1 stepchild. I have a grandchild. I'm also a widow. So there's a lot of things in life I've already lived through. And a lot of that includes emotional, mental, physical abuse. Hence why she asked me to make a video for all you talking about it. So, how did I become the person I am today? Well, my mother was a single mother. My biological father stepped away before I was even born. He only sent me one time into courthouse to sign away his rights. My mother married and met my younger brother's father whenever I was 3. My younger brother came around whenever he was 6, and he has mental issues. He has cerebral palsy. He's autistic. So there's a lot of things that my mom did for him that she didn't do for me. And so I raised myself for the most part. And, once again, it's something that made me who I am today. Do I regret, not really be having a bond with my mom growing up and, doing that mother-daughter toll thing? I regret not having that relationship with my mom, but at the same time, if I didn't have that type of relationship, I'd see different, things differently today, I guess. But and so my father, my stepfather, my brother's dad, he was an alcoholic. I mean, I was the one that made his screwdrivers in the morning. Him and my mom would always fight. They'd always, just, it wouldn't be good. I mean, it never came to blows, but yelling is still abuse. Whenever you're in a situation where behind closed doors you're totally different than you are out in public, you understand. But so anyway, my mom divorced him whenever I was about 13, 14 years old. My mom started dating again. She ended up meeting this guy that is now my stepfather. And lo and behold, he was an alcoholic again. I mean, sometimes there's a trap that women fall into. Well, he had a daughter, and she became my stepsister. Well, she started dating this guy that was, 30 minutes away. To prevent anything from happening, I was sent along. So I was the third wheel, and, my stepsister didn't like that. Her boyfriend didn't like that. So they decided to hook me up with one of their friends. Yay, kind of like a blind date type deal. And then without me even saying if I wanted a relationship with this person or not, I was just like thrown in his lap. Well, here for 3 months, I was put through different types of situations that some would consider being naive, some people would consider almost being raped, some would consider being blackmailed. You know, he would threaten me that if I didn't have sex with him, he would hurt himself because I found him repulsive. I mean, just repulsive. He barely bathed. He had a pair of socks he never washed because he was a football player and there was that superstition, no, you don't wash your socks during football season. They stood up by themselves, you know? So he was pretty disgusting sometimes, and I just didn't find him attractive, but I didn't want him to hurt himself. One time I came down into his basement bedroom, and he was in an awkward situation, and I'm like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And he's like, well, you won't have sex with me. I must be that ugly, so I don't deserve to be here anymore. And I'm like, I'll have sex with you. I'll have sex with you. So 3 months into being at his house, whenever she was at his house, I got pregnant. Well, the whole time I'm pregnant, I'm hearing, I better be able to see the baby as often as I want to, because if not, I'm going to take custody of the baby and you'll never see him. So I'm trying to tell my mom, hey, this is what's going on. This is what they're telling me. I don't know how to stop going over there. I'm scared. Well, as long as you don't take the baby out of, this area, you don't gotta worry about it. Things differ from county to county and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I can't just keep the baby away from his family. And she's like, yes, you can. You have that right. They can come here and see the baby. But the baby's other side, his daddy's family didn't want to come here whenever the baby can just come to them. It was just more sense. Well, after 5 weeks of having the baby in the house and the back and forth and the back and forth, and me and my mom going back and forth and back and forth, and me not knowing what to do because at that time I was a junior in high school. I was only 16. And I didn't know what to do. So one night my now stepfather comes home with my mother from having a date night, and he says, I'm never gonna sit face to face with my wife again and listen to her cry about a stress that can be easily resolved with it being removed. He's like, you need to leave. So I had no other place to go other than the baby daddy's mom's house, and that's where I went. So I stayed there, and I would nap with the baby, things that you do whenever you have an infant. You try keep your energy up as well, because it's hard raising a baby. It really is. You're up all hours of the night. You don't get any sleep yourself. You're always exhausted. The baby's always eating. You forget to eat. There's just so many things that happen whenever you have a baby. So you try a nap with the baby. Well, the grandma didn't like that. She's like, whenever the baby's napping, you should be cleaning the house. You should be cleaning the house. You should be making sure the house is cleaned up. Well, there were 5 adults living in this house along with, my infant, and there were multiple cats and a dog. Well, these cats made a giant litter box out of a huge 2-foot thick laundry pile that pretty much filled up a whole room in their basement. and the stink from down there. Then there was fleas, and that's what the baby's father. That's where his bedroom was like next door to that room, and it was just I always had fleas on me, and then the cat scratched a hole in the water bed, and it was wet, and that's what we had to sleep on. And so, you know, there's a lot of things I've experienced in life, and so living there, was just uncomfortable, and I didn't want to live there, and I didn't know how to get out, and the baby's father proposed to me, and I didn't want to be married. I didn't want to be married to him, but I didn't want to lose my baby, and because I still can't. I had my mind about the custody thing. I was scared. Well, one day his mom came home, and she's like, "Hey, you gotta leave. Just get the baby and leave." So, my mom at the time was going through kidney stone removal, and needed a lot of time, and she said that I couldn't come home because there was a lot going on and they didn't have time to help me with the baby. So I found a friend to stay with, and she herself had an infant child, and she was living with her mother, and it was a small apartment. We barely fit, but we made it work. Well, 2 weeks later, they're like, "You gotta figure something out. Move back home with your mom. Do something. We can't keep affording this. We just can't afford it." And I understood, and so I begged my mom. I'm like, "Let me come home. Let me come home." And she said I could, but it wasn't to a certain time. Well, in the meanwhile, the baby's dad's like, "Come back up here. Let's work things out. Let's really talk about things." Because there was just a lot that I didn't want to be there, and I didn't want to be with him. But in a way, I wanted to try to be a family. In a way, there was just a lot going on in my mind. So I went up there, and I spent the weekend. Well, I was supposed to go home Sunday night. I couldn't find a ride home. Nobody would take me home. So, about noon, Monday, I get told, "Okay, well, you're going to go home. You're going to go back to Sarah's house," because, I was staying at my friend's house still. She's like, "You're going to go back to your friend's house, but the baby's staying here." And I'm like, "No, my baby's coming with me if I leave. He leaves." She's like, "Well," reaches into her purse, pulls out a legal document, an ex parte order, which is emergency custody, and she and the baby's father are now custodial parents of the baby. So I must leave, and next time you see us, we'll be in court. I was sitting there holding my baby. I said, "No, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this." The baby's father takes him out of my hands and says, "Just listen to my mom. You'll see him in a couple days. I'll talk to my mom. You'll see him in a couple days. Don't worry, I'll talk to my mom." So I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs and looking up at the stairs, and seeing my baby cry, and I'm sitting there crying my eyes out, not wanting to leave, but his mom's pretty much pulling me out the door and getting me into the car, and she took me to my friend's house, and my friend didn't know I was coming. I wasn't supposed to come back. I knocked on her door. She opened the door. see me standing there by myself. She said, "Where's Josh? Where's Joshua?" And I just looked at her and I fell apart. I didn't talk for 2 weeks. I'm not even sure if I told them exactly what happened in those 2 weeks of time. All I remember doing is sitting on their balcony smoking cigarettes. Just sitting there. I mean, for 2 weeks, nothing. I just couldn't say nothing. What could you say? So I lost custody of him. It took him to be 16 years old to find out the truth of everything what happened, because he was always told I didn't care. Well, he was told the truth and he was 16, and he's now, in my life, and I do have a grandson because of him and his fiance. So I'm happy that I have him back in my life after everything we went through. But at the end of mine and his father's relationship, I met Kara's dad. He was a great guy, had a great family, great job. Had a car. I ended up pregnant. Here we go again. So at that time I was staying with my mom, and she's like, well, you and him need to find a place to live. So me and Kara's dad found an apartment, and we tried to start our lives together. Well, as I'm pregnant, I constantly get woken up to parties in my living room. He's at 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd leave the bed and have a bunch of people over to, drink and play video games and play card games. And I'm just like, we were in bed sleeping. Why are these people here? Well, if you can't handle it, you can't handle it, but, blah, 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 blah. Well, there was hardly any food in the house, and I was sitting there eating rice, and I was making my own turkey gravy, chicken gravy, and making mashed potatoes, instant mashed potatoes, and, anything I could to eat because I was pregnant. Well, here to find out, her father would go out to eat for lunch during his lunch break, and before he'd come home, he would stop and eat before he came home and not even bring me anything. And I'm like, you treat me like crap. You sit there and I gotta have sex with you whenever you want me to. And he's like, well, you have to pay your room and board somehow, don't you? My room and board? So, Kara was born at 5 pounds 5 ounces, which is really small. Full term, but she was really small. I didn't have enough nutrients. She didn't have enough nutrients, Well, for 8 months, we lived together as a family, trying to make things work, and things just never got better. I found evidence of him cheating on me with a 16-year-old. Yeah, you heard me right. This girl was dating his younger cousin. And one night, I call her because we were friends, and her mother says, oh, well, she went out with Kara's dad because Kara's dad and his fiance were going to go to the movies and she was going to babysit for them. I'm like, I'm the baby's mom, and he went out for the night and isn't expected back until late. She's like, oh, really? Well, I caught him cheating 2 more times after that. Well, enough was enough. I applied for an apartment, tried to get the heck out. While I'm waiting, the house we were living in, it was old. It was an old building, and it had a mice problem. I found mice in her room, in Kara's room. There was a mice found dead in the toilet, and I was worried that one would end up hurting the baby because she was very young. Like I said, we lived there for 8 months until I finally was able to move out on my own. So, whenever me and Kara finally got a place of our own, me and her were just me and her for 7 years. Well, 6 years. Oh, not even quite that. It was like 5 years because she was 8 months and I met my husband whenever she was like 6. So, me and Kara, that's, I'll never forget those times because it was just me and her and it was fun. But then came the next chapter in my life, and I met who, became my husband. He also had a daughter, about Kara's age, about 8 months, 9 months older than her. Hey, let's get together, see where this goes. It ends up 2 weeks after I met the person, he moved in with me. Okay, we just clicked. We knew what each other wanted in life, and we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. Oh, a few months goes by. I have my son. And this pregnancy was happy because we were both happy about it. We both were happy that we were having a baby together. Whenever he found out it was a boy, it was even better because he was able to carry on his name. My son happens to be the third in his name. And, we became a family of 5, and it was just great. We always traveled because he was a truck driver. We always traveled and did things together on the weekends whenever he'd come home, and we just enjoyed life. Well, in 2012, he had a truck accident to where he was in Texas, and Texas, the speed limit down there is 80 miles an hour. Well, he's going about 80 miles an hour. His load of rebar decides to shift, taking the whole truck with him, and he rolls. Split his scalp open from his eyebrow clean back to the back of his head. Had to have surgery. Had traumatic brain injury. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Bipolar disorder. The head injury, it was called post-concussive syndrome. And it messes with the person's emotions. It messes with the person's thoughts. It makes them feel they're all alone in this world, even more than what we already do. Because, there's a lot of people that feel alone in this world. But whenever you feel that alone and nobody understands what you're going through, my husband had voices going through his head. He had thoughts that everybody was against him and plotted against him every single morning on how to ruin his life. My husband, he's seen the world in a way that only he could see it because he couldn't ever see it for what most of the outside world would even see it as. He was a great father. He was a hard worker. As a friend, he couldn't be any better of a friend. He would bend over backwards for you, get the shirt off his back. He was the best person that you could associate yourself with. If you had my husband in your life, you had a good person behind your back. That was him. after his accident, he was still that person. But then he'd come home and I was his rock. I was the one he could let it all out to. So I'd sit there and he'd, complain and argue and, bring up little things that I did wrong during that day or during that past month. And he would just bring up the smallest things to argue with me because of how mad he was at everybody else. And at the end of it, he would finally break down and tell me exactly what was on his mind and why he was so upset. I allowed him to calm down. He got it out. Even though the words that he said to me at those times, because when you have a brain injury like he did, people say some really mean things. But, my husband was still somebody that would always be there for you. Well, January 8th would have been 9 years me and my husband got married. From the time he had his accident to just last July, I seen the man change. And as a wife, things run through your head, Everyone's telling you, oh, I want to let him treat me that way no matter what his, problem is. Well, if he can't control it, why don't you leave? Well, maybe he needs mental help. Maybe he needs to talk to a psychologist. Maybe he needs to be locked away. Maybe he needs more help than you can give him. And you hear all these things, and all you want to do is think of your vows and think of, I promise to stay by this person through thick and thin, through sickness and health. How could you just walk away from somebody? If you yourself were paralyzed the rest of your life and you couldn't do things, would you want your spouse to walk away from you? A brain injury is no different from being paralyzed, in my opinion. It's still a handicap. And I could never walk away from my husband because of his sickness. He never hit me. He never hit me. Was there mental and emotional abuse? Yes. And that's hard to admit. The last year that my husband was alive was the most drastic changes. Before me and my husband met, he put himself through rehab. He was a cocaine addict. He always wanted to stay away from it. He knew it was bad for his life because he just knew it led him down the wrong path in life. So he stayed away from it the whole relationship. I'm so proud of him. Well, a year before his death, he started using. And the changes that does to your head itself, along with what was already wrong with my husband. He had thoughts that people were literally trying to kill him. He had thoughts that people were sabotaging things, and he started cheating on me. And one of the toughest things about that is, I found the evidence and I told him that's okay. If she's the extra thing you need to be happy in our lives, go for it. Some people may call me crazy for even doing that. But you know, I loved the man. I wanted to see him happy. I wanted to see him alive again. I wanted to see him before the accident. And if he could make her that little bit more happy in life and give him that excitement again, okay. So he starts dating her. Lo and behold, she's a heavy user of cocaine as well. So my husband started asking me if me and the kids could spend the night out of the house. All of us. He wanted to have his girlfriend over without any of us being there. Well, it took me a long time to actually find somebody for all of us to go, you know, especially me. Who's going to take a full grown adult overnight whenever, for so long, you've been pretty much been made to be a loner because you've got tore away from all your friends and most of your family. And so, you know, I didn't know who to turn to. Once again, I reached out to my friend that I reached out to years before, ironically. So, you know, I stayed a night there, stayed a couple nights there. And my husband's like, you know what, just come home. Everybody wants to come home. Nobody's leaving me alone. Nobody's, you know, helping me get the peace I need. All I need is to be home alone by myself for a while. I need to think about things. Things aren't right in my head. There's so much going on in my head. I love you. I love her. You know, I'm tired of everyone telling me how to live my life. I'm tired of being told what to do all the time. And, you know, I'm doing this wrong. I'm doing that wrong. You know, he was so confused. So we all came home. And a couple of days later, he's like, you know, can you guys go somewhere again? So we did. And this time, the locks were changed on me. Yeah. Well, the fifth day I spent at my friend's house with my son in her camper because it was a more private area for me and him to, you know, spend time with, you know, and together. We stayed in their camper. I was at work talking to my husband all day, you know, things were going on, you know, we were just discussing them. My manager comes to me about 5 o'clock and he's like, hey, you know, you need to step outside with me for a quick second, you know, come out, you know, the back door with me. I'm like, why should I come out the back door with you? Am I fired? You know, what's going on? Well, he takes me outside and walks around the building. 2 police officers come from around the building and they come up to me and they're like, are you such and such, you know, were you his wife? And I said, well, yes. And they told me the news that he had passed away. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just talked to him. He was fine. Well, he passed away. I get on the phone. I know I gotta go back to the house. You know, everybody needs to come back to the house. We need to get through this. We need to start, you know, handling this and do proper, you know, make sure he's buried and laid to rest correctly. He needs to be, you know, we gotta do right. We gotta make sure that he's laid to rest. So I called his mom right after I found out And I said, what do we do? She's like, well, here's the thing. He changed the locks on the house, and if you go back to the house, I'm going to press trespassing charges on you. I called the cops. They told me, that's your residence. You live there. If you need to, break in your house and do what you have to do. You just lost your husband. Everything is rightfully yours. And you need to start working on, this and that. And, they were trying to help me emotionally. They were trying to help me, trying to point me in the right direction on where I should go. And I said, well, with him changing the locks, is there any way I can change them to locks that keys that I have and things that they don't have? I said, she's threatening to come into my house and, burn all my stuff and take it all away and throw it all away because nothing matters to her that was mine. The only thing that matters to her was her son's, and, whatever she finds that wasn't his, she's throwing away. And, what can I do about this? I work, my kid's a babysitter. How can I ensure that my stuff is safe and that she's not going to get into my stuff and get rid of it without me being able to properly move out and find a place? And they told me, change the locks. If you don't feel safe, change the locks. You have a right to do that. You are the resident. Even if you were, renting, you are the resident. I changed the locks. Lo and behold, I was at work one day. They showed up. I had to call the cops. I had to meet them there. I mean, I had a lot of issues, and needless to say, I was made to move in about 2.5 weeks after my husband passed. And me and my son now live in an apartment, and we try and make every day a little bit better because we try to better ourselves every day. And yes, there's a lot of stuff that I've been through and a lot of stuff that I haven't even told you and discussed. And I just want to tell you guys, no matter what you go through in life, life goes on, and it always will. You wake up every morning, you gotta do something. Go to work, go to school. If you have kids, make sure your kids, do what they need to do. Have animals, take care of the animals. Have a purpose in life, make yourself happy. Because in the long run, I learned that. And if you don't know that, you should. The only person in this world that can make you happy is you. You can't be happy from a boyfriend, girlfriend. A friend can't make you truly happy. Nobody can make you truly happy but you. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm always sad, everybody hates me, I hate myself. Okay, once again, if you're always negative, you're never going to have a positive life. If you always look at the bad things in life, you're always going to end up with the bad. You got to think good, and things will happen for you. You got to wake up every morning and say, I can do this. Different abuses and different things that you go through in life, you can't let them weigh you down. So, I don't know if I've hit all the points I really wanted to make in the video. I'm not sure how people are even going to take everything in this video. But there's a lot of lessons in my story. And that's what Kara wanted to prove. That even though you go through abusive situations, it's up to you to make the right choices in life. Yes, I'm a single mother. I'm a widow. I'm 38 years old. But I'm here. I have wonderful children. I have a wonderful grandchild. And that's what I gotta remember. So, thank you for staying with me. Thank you for listening. And have a great day.